No. I don't know about this one. Hi, hello, and welcome back to another Onkruid video. We're talking about David Vann's Legend of a Suicide. Don't mind the Dutch cover, just look at how beautifully shiny the book is. It's a should you read video. I haven't prepared an entire PowerPoint because I don't think this book warrants it, even though that sounds like something very harsh to say. It's not necessarily meant like that. I just finished it after reading through it for like a weekend and maybe one more extra day. If I would have really read through it, I feel like it's a 2-day book. And it was strange. It was confusing. It was mind-boggling, but not in like an awe-inducing manner. It was not mind-boggling in the sense that you were thinking like, wow, how could this twist ending have happened? Or how can characters behave in such a different way than we expect from them and kind of shake our world, turn it upside down for a second? No, it was just confusing and mind-boggling because of the way the book is created and structured. Only after reading and looking around online for some reviews, that's only when I realized that the book is supposed to be 5 different short stories. That's never mentioned anywhere. And it might be just stupid of me to assume that a book needs to have a structure that connects all the different sub-elements in its story, but I mean, it might just be kind of a hiccup in my journey getting into more and more reading, and I might experience more books in the future where I can't make sense of the structuring, but it was just so confusing. And I think that the main obstacle, the main facet of the book that made this so confusing is that it is entirely, or supposed to be entirely, based around one event. And spoiler alert, but if you just read the back of the book, you know. Spoiler alert, that event is the suicide of the author's father. The book is fiction, but the suicide of the father, that which all the stories in some way, shape or form relate to, is non-fiction. And when you emphasize one singular event as the entire basis of your book, the entire basis of your story, you would expect in some way, shape or form for that element to also be centralized inside of the story, right? But no, the suicide of the father in one chapter happens, and then in the next chapter we're just in a completely different location and the father is still alive. It's very hard to figure out what the hell is going on while you're still reading the book. And it was frustrating. It's perfectly summed up by a Goodreads review I will quote now. It's a review by a user named Jasmine, and reading her review afterward made me appreciate the book a bit more and bump up my Goodreads review from 2 stars to 3 stars, because all in all, it is still skillfully written, and the short stories on their own are actually quite exciting to read. They are actually quite amusing. Well, amusing as far as it can go when the topic is suicide, but they are actually interesting. They are beautifully written stories, but just not knowing that they are separate stories kind of really fucked up my enjoyment of this title. What Jasmine has to say. This is an extremely confusing book. I feel the need to put a warning out there that this book is short stories, not a novel. Thank you very much, Jasmine. That would have really helped beforehand. Except it is all short stories about the same person, except that the stories insist on contradicting each other. Do not try to figure out when the suicide happened, or you will undoubtedly drive yourself crazy. This like really sums up my experience with the book, and I really felt vindicated, and I felt a feeling of fulfillment and recognition that I was not the only one experiencing the book with this confused look on his face all the time. Do not try to figure out who is who. Do not, under any circumstances, question the narration. And then, when you finish all this, ignore everything I have said, throw out all my advice and do all of these things, because in reality they have to be done. This book, like all books, has to be read. Damn, bro. I wish I could be like Jasmine in my reviews of books, because that is really like a profound way of talking about it. Leave everything you want to do behind, don't try to connect the dots, but in the end, after reading everything, then only try to connect the dots. And after reading that, I could appreciate the book. Should you read it? No, in my opinion not. It is too confusing, it is too much of a garbage fire being puked on.
Watch your profanity.
And I would much rather read something that I can just read with a smile and not with like a contorted face that is trying to figure out what calculations are in order to kind of realize what the story is about now. Although I must say, the longest short story in the middle about the adventures of a father and a boy spending a year in Alaska, that was actually a very enjoyable story. That was a great short story. If the book would have been just that, I would have loved it. I would have said, yeah, read it for sure. And an interesting fact to kind of end off the short little ramble, the short little rant on why I think you shouldn't read the book. is that when I realized afterwards by listening to an interview with the author that the story in the middle I just talked about is actually based on his feeling of guilt towards his father, that really uplifted my enjoyment of the book as well. What happened in reality was his father did in fact ask the author, David Vann, to spend an entire year with him in Alaska in the cold, and he said no. In the short story in the middle that I keep talking about, he actually said yes, and they have a great time together, but other mishaps occur and the story takes a turn, a dark turn. But in reality he said no, and 2 weeks later his father actually committed suicide. So just he kind of puts that feeling of guilt into the story, and realizing all of that afterward made me appreciate the book a bit more, but it's not a pleasant reading process. One final example that I can give of why I dislike the book is that all of a sudden in that large story in the middle, there are no more any quotation marks to imply that somebody is talking. There's no way of ruling out whether it's the narrator talking right now, or nobody is talking right now, or persons in the story are interacting with each other, and that just made it even, that put another layer around the onion of confusion, you know? Another one you had to peel off to kind of reach that juicy core that you want to bite out of, because we all like to bite out of raw onions. Don't read it unless you're interested in confusion, and I'm not gonna say unless you're interested in suicide and the psychological impact of that, because I think that is an aspect of the story that is very much dimmed out. It's very much in the background. It's low-key available in the book. You can find some of the psychological effects lingering after a person in your near vicinity commits suicide, but I think all in all you can spend your time on better things. Thanks all for watching. Bye bye.